Okay? It's not in our own power. Okay? We're simply yielding the power of our will in agreement with God. Okay? Working with the things that His Spirit will enter into. Therefore, we're working with the assisted ability of the Spirit. Right? Therefore, our faith does not become weary. Our wills do not become bruised. Okay, so also here he says about suffering according to the will of God. Okay, that has to do with uh, uh, the uh, the three R's and VHP. Okay, so we're suffering. The three R's has to do with revelation, uh, reflection, rehearsing, and reciprocation. Okay, through which we're overcoming. The VHP has to do with the vulnerability, humiliation, and pain. Okay, and suffering is His will. Okay, therefore choose faith. Okay, so we understand this pattern, that it's not apart from this pattern that we bear forth fruit, but it's by this pattern. Okay, God set the design for our fruit bearing. Okay, for the cleansing of our hearts. That through the testing of our hearts, okay, He would bring forth purging, cleansing, and healing. Okay, and growth. Okay, not apart from this, but through this. Okay, therefore we simply cooperate with Him. Okay, in agreement with His work. Okay, and in obedience to His plan. Okay, remaining within the restrictions that He set. Not trying to find some other way, but working with God. Okay, this is what it has to do with walking with God. We're in agreement with Him. There's an active form of agreement. Okay, which is governed by His knowledge and empowered by His Spirit. So there are those those who suffer. Okay, but not according to the will of God, and those that suffer according to the will of God. Oh, it looks like I jumped a paragraph here. Okay, so we're talking about suffering according to the will of God. Does God take delight in our suffering? No, He doesn't. Okay, God takes delight in Christ and our contact with Him, which increases His virtues in us. Okay, God designed this process with wisdom to preserve our souls from the effects of darkness. Okay, which remains within this dimension until the time appointed by God to put an end to the testing of our hearts, and therefore cast death aside as someone no longer of any use. Okay, so we don't want to be tethered to that which is being cast aside. We want to be tethered to the eternal, okay, being tethered to the throne of God. So God set this pattern for us in Christ, okay, whom He also raised from the dead, so that we could follow after Him by this pattern, okay, in submission to His grace, which sustains our faith daily. So therefore, Peter isn't putting focus on our suffering, but on our fruit bearing. Okay, he's putting the focus on Christ, isn't he? So he's bringing these things out because many were teaching a strange set of doctrines, okay, which promise godliness without testing of the heart, okay, just as they still do today. Okay, so he was bringing these things out, continuing to set focus upon Christ, okay, and bringing out the contrast to between truth and the false knowledge that was being preached. Okay, same thing we do today. And what he says here is concerning commit to the keeping of their souls. All right, keeping has to do with preserving. Okay, now truth is a preservative, just as salt. Okay, we keep our souls in His care through the use of His tools. Right, so, as he said in verse 1. Okay, he that has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. Okay, now it's not truth within the soul uh, that truth in and of itself. Okay, it's truth mixed with faith. Okay, that preserves the soul. Okay, so it's not a one-time application of salt that preserves the soul. Okay, it is the ongoing. Okay, as we continue to bring ourselves in contact with this truth. Okay, participation in the assembly. Okay, our continued study of the doctrine. Okay, continuing to reflect upon this knowledge, bringing forth sacrifices of faith and charity. Okay, that this knowledge is gaining expression through the activity of our faith, which is governed by this knowledge, right? There's this continual activity taking place. Okay, this is how the soul is being preserved. Okay, it's not something that just simply is applied once like some kind of a cream, right? And then there's healing takes place and then it's over with, right? Okay, truth is a preservative through the activity of faith, okay, which remains within this truth. It's a cycle. Okay, there's an ongoing cycle that takes place. Just as you can't simply pour water and soap into your washing machine and expect to come back an hour later and your clothes are clean. Okay, they're going to be nasty. And they're going to be worse than they were when you put them in because now they're still dirty, okay, but now they're also wet and there's blotches of soap on them, right? Because it doesn't dissolve without the agitation. Okay, that the agitation is necessary, isn't it? Okay, that activity. It's the same type of thing. Um, so he says here, as concerning the will of God, having to do with His power. Okay, Christ is the power and the will of God. So commit yourself to the use of His tools, in which He has provided access to His grace. Okay, which is the power for sustaining our faith. Okay, He has provided and made known these contact points, therefore draw near to Him through these things. Okay, exercise your faith with these things. And when he says well doing, he's not talking about acts of benevolence, okay, which the world esteems as good. Remember that covenant apostles aren't speaking from the perspective of the soil, but from the throne of God, from through the eyes of the Spirit. Okay. Now, while the world esteems these things as good, okay, they're neither. It has nothing to do with faith. Okay, so Peter's saying, keep doing good works of faith. Okay, through which we keep ourselves joined to His light. So he's talking about the contact points in the priesthood, isn't he? So nothing is called good by God, okay, when severed from His light. Okay, He only approves those things which remain joined to His light. Right? Which is why He said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Christ was never separated, okay, from His light. Okay, even though some people preach that, okay, He never was. Now, let's go on here also as concerning a faithful Creator. Okay, God is the maker of the fruit in you, which is birthed by suffering. Okay. Now, God is faithful as He continues to reflect upon the same pattern. Excuse me, my voice is starting to break up a little bit here. So God is faithful as He continues to reflect upon that same pattern by which we are reflecting and building. Okay, He's teaching us um, by this pattern because He's preparing us through the priesthood to rule as kings, as heirs of His throne. Okay, so those who seek to imitate God reflect upon the pattern of their own souls instead of the pattern of His soul, and because they do this, they are taken advantage of by Satan, who keeps them in bondage through many false promises, okay, which they want to believe. Okay, instead of wanting to please God, they want to believe these lies. So those who walk by faith are following the signature overlay provided by God, okay, and they're learning of Him through the tutorage of His angels. Okay, and He is faithful and true to the original plan, to the original pattern of His plan, and so are we through the covenant of Jesus Christ. Okay, and therefore does He make our faith living. Okay, so as Peter's been speaking of the priesthood here, okay, he's going to continue on here. I think this is probably a good place to stop, though. So we'll go ahead and stop here for now and pick up on 1 Peter chapter 5 next time. And just we'll conclude this assembly just a little bit early because I don't want to get into the middle of some more notes here without that time. So let's go ahead and we'll use this as a cutoff point. And I don't, let me see here.